Hey everyone, so today we're going to be focusing on theory. So this one's going to be a little bit longer. And so historically, there's basically been three ways to view deviance. The first one is biological, and this one is saying that criminals become criminals because it's in their DNA. Right? That if your father was a criminal, that you therefore are going to be criminal because it's in your DNA. So that kind of idea. People are born criminals. Psychological is very much also with this like genetic perspective that there are just some people that it's in their brains or something's wrong with their brains, the chemistry, different things like that, which sometimes may be partly true. But here, of course, in sociology, we're going to be focusing on the sociological arguments. And so what's important is that the biological and the psychological perspectives locate the deviance in the person. They're going to say, what's wrong with this person? Why are they deviating? Is it their brain? Is it themselves? Is it their DNA? Right? Sociology is not about that. Sociology will say, well, we're going to look at the act, the social construction of the act, of the behavior. So we're going to look at sociological perspectives, look at deviance in the act, right? So particular is how we create, right? Something like chewing gum, jaywalking, tattoos, right? Things that may have been problematic at some point or are problematic, etc. It's all showing that it's a social construction. And that's what we're focusing on. Okay, the biological argument. So where does this kind of come from? So it dates all the way back to 19th century. An Italian theorist, that this idea that people are born criminal. We could detect who would be criminal based on how their body looked. So if they had smaller foreheads, if they were muscular, aggressive, that, if they looked a particular way. Oh, this is Willem Sheldon. They looked a particular way, they would be criminals. Compared to people who maybe were fat, soft, round, extroverted, they would not be criminals. And so, or if you were thin, wary, sensitive, and introverted, again, not criminals. And so this is all kind of the foundation of the biological argument of why people commit crime. So they're born that way. It's in their DNA. Psychological. So some of the perspectives here would be people with lower IQs commit more crime than people with higher IQs. I mean, if this is the case, then we wouldn't have CEOs committing fraud. We wouldn't have people on Wall Street doing what they did. And it's like all these other things wouldn't be happening, but it does happen, right? There's a lot of highly educated people that commit crime. And then you have something called frustration aggression hypothesis, which argues that frustrated people take out their aggression onto other people, which I don't think I would completely disagree with this. Okay, so now turning our focus to the sociological theories. So we're going to cover a few important theories. So we'll cover functionalist, focusing on strain theory, conflict, symbolic interactionism, focusing on differential association, and labeling theory. Okay, so for functionalists, we're going to go all the way back to Durkheim that we talked about a couple chapters ago, 3 or 4 chapters ago. And so Durkheim discusses, remember I was talking about bonding in community and how that either helps or hinders people. And so deviance serves a purpose, a positive social function by clarifying moral boundaries and promoting social cohesion. Again, if we know what is deviant behavior, we know what is wrong. It's teaching us, other people in the community, how not to behave. And then people are able to unite against those people who aren't listening, those deviants over there, right? And so that's the social cohesion part. For example, punishing those who plagiarize separates those who should be in college from those who are not responsible enough to study, to practice, to learn, etc. Right? Okay, so with the functionalist perspective, there's something called strain theory. And so here is Robert Merton. And so he's not necessarily trying to argue that people should conform. He just understands there are particular goals in society and there's particular ways of getting those goals that are accepted. That if you conform, then that's a good thing. But there's also other categories. And so we'll kind of talk about that. So it states that our goals in society that people want to achieve, but they cannot always reach these goals. This creates stress or strain because people are aware of the goals, but do not have the means to achieve them. And so here is the typology. So here is the kind of, how do we categorize this? Okay, so let's think about what are the main cultural goals for the U.S. The main goal, I would argue, is the American dream, right? Having financial stability, owning your own home, wealth. So the cultural goals tend to be focusing around financial stability, having a lot of money, being powerful. And then, so what are the accepted institutionalized ways of getting rich, of becoming wealthy? Right? What is generally the ideas? For the most part, it's going to be going to college and working hard, right? And so if you have accepted, yes, this is my cultural goal. Yes, I want to be rich. I want to be wealthy. I want to own a home. And yes, I'm going to college and I'm getting my degrees. And so essentially that categorizes you into the conformity box. If you reject the means, I don't want to go to college. That doesn't make sense for me. But I still want to get rich. I still want money. I still want to be wealthy. Who would fall under here? Any ideas? Really, criminals, drug dealers, anything here that are innovative ways. I mean, of course, we don't call them innovative, but they're going outside of the box to get the cultural goal. Okay, ritualism. These are people who have accepted the institutionalized ways of, maybe going to college or just going to work, a 9 to 5, but reject the cultural goal. They have an understanding that they're never going to be rich, that that's not their life, that they're just trying to get by. So for the most part, people here are just going to be folks that are living paycheck to paycheck. People that get up, do their 9 to 5, come back home, eat, watch TV, go to bed, do it all over again. There's no really push to get this cultural goal. I'm just living my life. This is my routine. This is it. Retreatism. People who reject the cultural goal and reject the way of doing it. So really what I think about here is maybe like hermits, people who kind of go into the woods, go off grid and live off the land, thinking about, moving to Alaska or something like that. That would be retreatism. You're essentially just retreating, tend to be by yourself, and you're just on your own there. The other one is new means, new goals, rebellion. You're going to create your own goals, your own institutionalized means, and you're just creating your own new typology. Right? Whole other category. So here I would think maybe something like the Amish, maybe things like communes, people who kind of create their own communities on their own, maybe even something like cults, depending on the cult that we're talking about, different things like that. Okay. All right, conflict theory. And so conflict theory is saying, who creates these laws? right, against the deviance of social construction. It's inequality. So deviance is a result of social conflict and inequality. Authority and power relations contribute to some people becoming criminal. So there are policies that are disproportionately impacting a particular amount of people, right? And that's why they're criminals, because who created that policy and created that label on them? It's like a very macro way of understanding it. Next is that in order for the powerful to maintain power, they must marginalize and criminalize the people who threaten their power. Right? The wealthy is the minority in the US, but they're going to create policies that are going to protect their power because the majority of people are not wealthy. So inequality is reproduced in the way that deviance is defined. An important concept to know here is called the power elite. A small group of wealthy and influential people at the top of society who hold the power and resources. These are wealthy executives, politicians, and military leaders. So think of a Venn diagram, 3 circles, right? CEOs, politicians, military. The power elite is a small one in the 3 that overlap. These are the most powerful people in the US. And it's for them, it's all about maintaining the status quo. Okay, an example of inequality in the social construction of policies and deviance. Crack versus cocaine. I feel like this is common knowledge at this point, but if you didn't know, 50 grams of crack equals 10 years in prison, compared to 5,000 grams of cocaine equals 10 years in prison. So what you have to know is that crack and cocaine are the same substance, the same ingredients are in it. The only difference is that crack is in a solid form, cocaine is in a powder form. That's one. The other, I guess not the only difference. The second difference is who is using them. Poor people are using crack. Black and brown folks use crack. Cocaine is being used by white elite. So they created this harsh policy, making it seem tough on crime, when in reality, all it was a racist policy to put black and brown people and classes, poor people, into jail. And so it was an unequal punishment that has to do with race and class and who uses the drugs. This started in the 80s, and it was not looked at and changed until 2010. And even then, it's still not equal. It's fixed some, but it's still not the same amount. Okay, so I have a clip on the new Jim Crow. And so here is just talking about the war on drugs and the problematic of who created these policies and why. Okay, and so if you're into criminology and the criminal justice system, if you want to be a lawyer or something like that, you must read the new Jim Crow. Like, this book is essential to people who want to work in the criminal justice system. You have to understand the history and the policy of the prison industrial complex. And so this, right along with 13th, which is a documentary on Netflix about the 13th Amendment and the implications that came about it, is super essential. So I highly suggest you watch that. And if you're having a hard time even understanding the criminalization and the racialization of Black people and why they're viewed as criminals, you have to watch 13th. You have to. Okay, labeling theory. So this is a symbolic interactionist theory. And so this says that deviance is caused by the external judgments, the labels created by other people, that change a person's self-concept, and that the way that others respond to him or her, or them. It depends on those in power who are determining the labels. Okay, and so what's happening here? I see a lot of labeling theory in high school, in inner city schools. A teacher high school, middle school, a student is misbehaving, acting up, yelling, whatever. The teacher calls them a troublemaker. A troublemaker gets into the detention office. All the other teachers sees the principal. They most likely have security, so now they're on the security's radar, and everyone's labeled them the bad kid, the thug. And so now they're labeled this, and now that's going to impact them. And so this label now becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, a prediction that causes itself to be true. And so there's two levels to this. You have the primary deviation. So whatever action that caused someone to label you as this or someone as this. And so if you maybe were cranky in the morning, you were hungry, you just got bad news, you were in an attitude, so you lashed out. Now, instead of you having a bad day, now you're a thug. Now you're a criminal. Now you're X, Y, and Z, right? The secondary deviation is once the individual actually starts to accept this, they start to embrace it, like, oh, okay, I'm a thug. Okay, I'm going to show you a thug. I'm bad. Okay, I'm going to be real bad. Like, I'm going to work your nerves. I'm going to mess this whole building up, right? It's like now you believe it. Now that's it. That's you. And so, yeah. I think it's very interesting and so relevant, I would argue, especially with education and the education systems. Okay, the next theory is differential association. And so again, this is still in symbolic interaction. And so this argues that people learn deviant behavior from those close to them, who provides models of opportunities for deviance. Deviance becomes a result of different socialization process. So I'm gonna give an example to folks who watch TV. Shameless, right? Shameless is about a poor family on the south side of Chicago getting by. And they kind of learn, they're socialized different. They learn different manners. They learn how to hustle. They learn how to make money out of anything. They learn how to be innovative, right? But this is all, they're learning how to be deviant, how to be criminals through the people around them, through their parents, through their family, through their neighborhood, through their schools. And so it just comes because they have a different socialization. Right? They're not getting the same socializations as middle class and upper middle class folks in the upper class, right? So that they're socialized differently. So I think this is a very interesting one as well. Okay, so here's just the thinking for you, which criminological theory makes the most sense to you? Why did you choose that one? Can you give a contemporary example of this theory that you've seen, Okay, that wraps up this one. Sorry, it was a little long. Okay, have a good one. Bye.